Ciao a tutti, benvenuti al tavolo italiano. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Italian Table. This is the 11th installment of the video series, Tips on Learning Italian. In this video, we're going to discuss my recommendations for resources that can help you in the process of learning Italian. And not an Italian course, but other items that can help you along the way with whatever direction you decide to use to learn Italian. Naturally, I'd like to think that Il Tavolo Italiano has plenty of resources to help you, but that's not what we're here to discuss. I want to bring up some third-party sources that helped me in my quest of learning the language, so that maybe it could help you as well. First, let's think about what we've learned so far. We talked about the first mistake, being realistic, defining what you want to do, sources for study material, support elements, tips on vocabulary, working out the kinks in writing, getting comfortable speaking, acclimating comprehension, and in the last video we discussed remembering to enjoy. So we've covered a lot on thoughts, attitudes, environment, and even some nuts and bolts type topics regarding studying Italian. If you apply many, or even just some of these ideas, you will have started to have built yourself a good foundation on which to learn. Now we just want to drop a few more resources into your bucket or toolbox that you can use to help you learn. So my recommendations, what exactly are those? Well, these are static resources, meaning books, tapes, CDs, etc. In other words, kind of ruling out Facebook friends, pen pals, etc. That I really found helped me out when I started studying Italian. In fact, my work with Il Tavolo Italiano initially was in part my way to try to fill in the gaps that these tools left in my learning experience, and also to bring together oftentimes the ideas and approaches of many into one. This is by no means an exhaustive list of everything I've studied, but instead they look back at the early days of my learning experience, and they include a couple of books, a couple of CDs, an audio course, a software program, and a couple of movies. I'm going to give these reviews, make them as short and concise as possible, otherwise this video could become extremely lengthy. But hopefully I'll say enough to maybe it'll spark your interest or prompt you to go ahead and purchase a couple of these. I really think that you would find these as much of a blessing as I have. Okay, so let's get started. If I was going to call any of these a must-have for all English-speaking students of Italian, it would be the following book, English Grammar for Students of Italian. And I know that I've brought this up before. I'm sure that you've seen this. If you have not purchased this book yet, I would highly, highly recommend it. Like I said, if there was anything I would call a must-have for English-speaking students of Italian, this would be the must-have. This is not a course on Italian. This book in itself will not teach you in Italian. Instead, what it is it's a great study companion. It's an incredible tool. One of the biggest issues that I have found many students of Italian have, English-speaking students of Italian, is understanding how the parts of speech in Italian work as opposed to how the parts of speech in English work. Another thing, and this was true of myself as well, is many people had forgotten the nomenclature, etc., for the parts of speech for English grammar, no less Italian grammar. This book is fantastic in that first, it'll help you remember the various aspects of English grammar, and then it compares it to the same aspects in Italian grammar and the similarities and the differences between the two. So for instance, let's say we're in class and we're talking about direct object pronouns, okay? And you're not real clear on what a direct object pronoun is. This will define it in English, give you some examples in English, then it'll define it in the Italian language using English words and tell you how it's used. The language they use is very, very, what can I say, very simple. They really do a great job of breaking it down. if you get this book, you will not be sorry. It's extremely economical, and once again, it is a great tool. If there was going to be a must-have for any of the items I'm going to mention today, I would make this number one. Incredible resource. If you haven't gotten it, I highly recommend you get it already. Or you get it now, excuse me. Okay. My next book recommendation is another little very economical gem called Italian Verb Drills. I love this book. Now I know that this is, if anything makes me sound like a geek, probably a book called Italian Verb Drills would do it, right? Just about verbs. But verbs in the Italian language are so incredibly important. They carry so much more weight than they do in the English language. They say so much more. There are so many sentences that we take 5, 6, 7 words to say that they can say in 2, sometimes 1. Because the verb carries so much information as opposed to English. I'm not going to go into details, but what I will tell you is in this book they start off extremely simple. They break down the 3 different main types of Italian verbs. They start off in the present tense, they move into other tenses. They give you plenty of opportunities to practice with a multitude of exercises. And if you do study your Italian with iltabloitaliano.com online, we have a companion course called Verb Drills, which uses this book as its text, as a supplemental text, and you can actually make use of this book there too. Once again, great book. You won't be sorry you got it. It is very, very economical, and it is a great tool. And if you master the Italian verb system, you're a good ways there on learning Italian. My next pick is rather unusual for me because I'm not a huge fan of teaching phrases, although I will do it from time to time, simply because some people really don't want to learn the grammar. They want to learn the phrases. Now, I do want to throw in the caveat that I think the problem with that is in the long run, and in the long run could be as little as a year, you're not going to be able to say as much. But, some people just want to go that direction. The other reason why I like this next tool is even those of us that really want to strive to try to master this beautiful language, it's a lot of work. It takes a while. And sometimes some quick battles won are just the encouragement that we need to keep going. Hence, my next recommendation, Drive Time Italian. This was a little audio course that I got when I first started learning Italian that I would listen to in the car. It's a great little resource for being able to listen to native Italians pronounce different things. Of course, it's one of those where you repeat after what they said. It will teach you some phrases. It does put it differently than some other programs do, which I like. I think diversity is important. It goes in a logical progression. You get to hear a couple of different accents. There is no accompanying book. This is an audio course only. It doesn't get extremely in-depth. It's a beginner course. But it's a great little tool to give you a few victories in the beginning so you feel like you're speaking Italian already. And it doesn't take much time if you can do it while you're in the car in traffic or however you want to work it. But if you want something along those lines, I would highly recommend Drive Time Italian. Very simple. It's also a good benchmark. When you first start to learn, go over it, see how you do. Put it away for 6 months. Come back and see if you actually are doing better. Drive Time Italian. Highly recommend it. My next pick needs no visual representation, as they're probably at the top of the name recognition list. Rosetta Stone for Italian. I personally think Rosetta Stone is a great program. I just don't think it's enough in itself. But I so believe in Rosetta Stone and the value that it does bring that I intend to actually purchase it for the next language that I intend to start learning, which is yet to be determined. So I think that's probably the biggest recommendation that I could give it, is that I intend to purchase it. However, though, Rosetta Stone's a little controversial probably for a lot of the people that I teach. for a couple of reasons. A lot of my students end up being people that started with Rosetta Stone, and they ended up with a lot of questions. They wanted to go farther. I'm not even necessarily sure that that's a bad mark on Rosetta Stone, simply because it did prompt you to go farther. So even that is a plus. And having said that, let's look at some of the pros and cons of Rosetta Stone. Number one, Rosetta Stone is a great way to build vocabulary. Simply because it's a program, there's going to be a lot of new vocabulary introduced. It's a great way to build up your vocabulary. I think probably one of the biggest pluses of Rosetta Stone is it can be fun and stimulating. It's a very professional program with great support, and since it is a computer program, multimedia, and they do a very good job at it, it lends itself to being a fun and interesting program, keeping you engaged in your study of Italian. Once again, it's another excellent opportunity to hear a native Italian speak. It's a very good way to practice pronunciation. And as I said, it's very professional with good support. There are a couple of cons to Rosetta Stone that I do like people to be aware of, even though I recommend it, or recommend it as part of your learning experience. I think it's important to also point out what I think are the drawbacks to it. Number one, Rosetta Stone is very expensive, comparatively speaking to other materials on the market, and of course Del Tavolo, which is free, right? Oh, and I do want to throw in a caveat. You don't have to have Rosetta Stone to learn Italian successfully, or any language for all that matters. It's not a must-have. It's just a good resource. Another con is, especially at the beginning levels, it can leave you wondering why you are saying what you're saying, and you're not going to get the answers that you will from some other program types, because it doesn't explain why you're doing what you're doing. And while I think the program is good, I'm not a big fan of their advertising. And let me tell you why. Well, a couple things. First of all, you can be speaking a new language in 10 minutes. Well, maybe that's true, but in all of my years now of studying Italian, I've still never said "Il bambino sta correndo." The little boy is running, which is one of the first things I learned in Rosetta Stone. The other thing about it is, since it doesn't teach the grammatical aspect of it, at least in the beginning levels, I haven't gone on to level 5 and beyond that, we're not there. It's more of a phrase class. Now it does mix up the words, allow you to change up your phrases a little bit, so it's more than a phrase class in that respect, but it really still leaves you hanging with a lot of questions on, well, why do I say it this way this time and that way that time? And their ads talk about learning a language naturally, the way you learned your mother tongue through total immersion. Well, there is some value to that statement, and there is some truth in that statement for sure, a lot of it. However, though, English being my mother tongue, after I had learned that through total immersion for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, you know what they decided to do? They sent me to school so that I could learn how to speak it properly. So even when I was totally immersed, 24/7, learning who knows how many words we learn as infants on a daily basis, I still had to go to school and learn how to use it so that I could sound intelligent and better formulate my thoughts. The same is true of Rosetta Stone. It will give you an emulation of a total immersion in that for how many ever minutes or hours a day you study it, you're studying by total immersion. But it's not going to be enough. So having said that, when I purchase Rosetta Stone for the next language that I decide to learn, which I'll be doing relatively soon here, I'm going to look at it as Rosetta Stone is a part of my learning experience. The only other drawback I had is the second times I went to Italy, when I used Rosetta Stone more than I did in the latter times, is that I had a little bit of a script mentality. I was used to hearing someone ask a question and then give a particular answer. Well, the Italians, they didn't follow the script. And when I asked the question, properly that I heard on Rosetta Stone, sometimes I would get a different answer. And if those words weren't in my vocabulary list, or I didn't understand that part of grammar very well, I really had a difficult time understanding the answers to my questions. Okay, my next two picks I'm going to do together, and they're actually music CDs. The first being by Georgia, Senza Paura, which I think is a wonderful CD. The second one is by Neck, Un'altra direzione. Okay, I love the idea of listening to Italian music for both practice and comprehension, and it uses a benchmark. So now let me explain. It can't be just any music. There's a lot of great material out there, and I really like to recommend music done, though, that is by an artist that articulates very well, and where the music is not so fast-paced that you're not going to be able to understand it, but it still holds great entertainment value. And I believe both of these, Senza Paura by Georgia and Un'altra direzione by Neck, accomplish just that. These are great CDs. There's a lot of ways you can do it. And the nice thing is it doesn't add a lot of time to your study time. You can listen to music while you're doing anything. And it helps you to acclimate to hearing Italian. Don't worry about the fact that you may not understand them if you're a beginner right away. Take joy in the fact that you pick up a word here and there. If you want to, take and print out the lyrics to one of the songs and go over it over and over and over again. There's lots of things you can do with these music CDs, but if you don't have any contemporary Italian music CDs, I would highly recommend these two. They're both great artists. They have lots of other music besides this, and I think that you would find it to be a great benefit. And then finally, I want to introduce you to two videos that I recommend getting in the Italian language. The first being Life is Beautiful. This film is absolutely incredible and winner of 3 Academy Awards. If you haven't seen this film, even if you're now learning Italian, I would recommend you watch this film. It is beautiful and entertaining. This is another great way to practice your Italian comprehension and set benchmarks for yourself, meaning how much did I understand on July 11th, and watch it maybe a few times, then put it away for 6 months, come back and see how much more you can understand than you did before. But this one's a little bit different than a music CD, because now while they're speaking, you also have the opportunity to observe their facial expressions, the body language, the context in which a conversation is set. But this movie is absolutely incredible, with a lot of opportunity to listen to Italian as well. What I would recommend you do, though, with any of the Italian movies, especially this movie, is to watch it one time without trying to understand any of the language. Go ahead and turn the subtitles on, read it if you have to, but listen to it, watch it in Italian, and just enjoy the movie first. Don't worry about what this means, or I think I understood that word, or any of that. Just watch the movie and enjoy it for the work of art that it is. And then after you've done that at least once, then go back and see how you do with the language. Don't be so consumed with the fact that it's a potential tool to help you learn Italian that you forget to enjoy it for its beauty. Okay? So Life is Beautiful, fantastic film, highly recommend you get it. The other film I wanted to recommend is probably a little less well known by Americans. Still recommend you get it in Italian. The Best of Youth. Another great film. A lot of diverse situations here. A lot of good opportunity to learn the language. Once again, I would recommend that you watch a film all the way through without trying to learn it once. The first time, so that you can appreciate it for what it is. And then begin to watch it. And once again, there are a lot of different ways you can do that. A lot of people prefer to watch them with the subtitles on once they start trying to understand it, and they kind of force themselves to not look at the subtitles, I've been told. Other people will take a film and watch it 15 minutes at a time. 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time. So they'll watch, I'll say, from minute marker number 10 to minute marker number 25, and they'll keep watching that over and over and over again until they get it right as far as understanding everything that is said. Some people, instead of subtitles, like to listen to it, attempt to write down what they hear in Italian, and then any words that they don't know, look up on Google Translate or something of that nature, which is also a good exercise. Italian being an extremely phonetic language, if you listen to it very, very well and they're articulating well, you should be able to write down what you hear because the words are spelt the way they sound, and then go look them up, which will also help you to remember it more because you went through a process. You worked to find out what that meaning was. So those are my 8 picks for simple tools that I believe will help you in your pursuit of learning Italian. I would like to interject one final thought here, and that is I know that a lot of people like to stick with one method of learning. They feel like it puts them on the fast track, they got a direction, and they just go. And I can appreciate that, but I have found that diversity has worked very, very well for me. One reason being is that Italians are not always going to say the same thing in the same way. Just like Americans won't say the same thing in the same way. We have different expressions. Probably the simplest example of that is if someone says thank you in English. You can say my pleasure, you're welcome, don't mention it, it's nothing. There's a lot of different things that we can say. All very, very simple sayings. But they may not, in Italian, learning English may not know all those words. Just like I've been studying Italian for 7-8 years now, and I learned another word that's used for you're welcome probably less than 2 months ago in Italian. Someone responded to it, grazie, and I didn't even know what they said, simply because it was one that I hadn't come across. And that's a simple example. When it comes to people giving directions, that could be expressed in a multitude of different ways. Expressing emotions, everything. And I found in teaching that when those that don't allow themselves as diverse of an experience in learning, if I interject a new way to say something, well, wait a minute, I thought that when you wanted to say that, you say this. Well, you can, but you can also say it this way as well. And if you think about it, there's just a multitude of examples of that in English. By looking at different programs, reading different things, listening different things in Italian, you'll eventually gather up an arsenal of a much more diverse set of ways of saying things and expressing yourself in Italian. Okay, so that wraps up my recommendations for this video. I hope you find it useful. I really hope you reach out and purchase at least a few of them. These aren't my books and CDs, but I really think that you would find them enjoyable and useful. We're almost done with this series. We got just a few more to go. Next video we'll be talking about when you just need a little bit more. The video after that, incorporation, study lifestyle. The one after that, dare to dream. And finally, planning your adventure. So, grazie mille. Thank you very much for choosing to study with Il Tavolo Italiano. I really hope this series is helping you in your pursuit of learning Italian. Remember, you can find much more out about Italian and Il Tavolo Italiano at iltavoloitaliano.com. It's iltavoloitaliano.com. Also, please feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube. We'd be happy to see you there, and you'll receive notifications of new videos. And finally, don't forget to give us a like on Facebook and check out what's happening on our Facebook page. So, allora, ciao, until next time. And ricordate, remember, if you want to really learn Italian, you also got to practice speaking it. Ciao.